If you're new here, this is my second channel, the extended channel, and this is where I do longer form content like composing while people watch, or score studies, or kind of just getting more in depth. My main channel is a little more polished and edited, so if you're into music theory and film scoring and how stuff works, check out my main channel, which is youtube.com/Ryan Leach. But today I thought I would do something a little different and do a score study, just to show, hopefully in not too long a period of time, how you can look at a full orchestral score and try to simplify it and really understand what's happening in what seems like maybe a complex, rich thing is maybe simpler than it looks. So today I was thinking, I wasn't exactly sure what to do, but I picked out 8 bars from the cue Harry's Wondrous World, which I've got on screen here from the Harry Potter Sorcerer's Stone, I think the first movie. And I picked out these 8 bars because it's this kind of soaring, classic John Williams, big rich sound, but also fairly simple overall, actually. So let's see, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, about 20 different parts all at once, but we're going to reduce this down, at least the first part of it, reduce this down to like 4 bars, or sorry, four ideas that are really happening. It's not really 20 different things happening. It's like 4, 5 different things happening. So I'm going to go for measure 171. I'll probably go about 8 bars. So we'll go to 179. I'm hoping I don't get flagged for playing music. I found a live recording of this, and I'm hoping that will not cause me any problems. So I'm going to play back from just a little before where this starts so we can just hear what we're working with today, and then we'll get into doing the reductions. So here's a few bars before bar 171 from Harry's Wondrous World. Here we go. All right, so just a short orchestral segment there, but you know, like I said, kind of flowing, rich. It's got all the things you would want from a Hollywood film score sound. So I'm going to switch over to Dorico. Unfortunately, so I'm going to switch over. That's not what I expected. All right, unfortunately, the app I'm using is not allowing me to share the PDF and the Dorico at the same time without kind of showing myself. It's just a whole mess. So I'm going to switch over to Dorico and only show that while I'm looking at the score. Maybe I'll switch back and forth a few times. Let's see. So a lot of my method here is inspired by Alain Meyran's Orchestrating the Line course from Score Club, which is phenomenal. If you haven't checked out Score Club, I always recommend it. Alain is a great teacher, and he just has a great way of thinking about things. So I'm working here. I usually try to get down to like 4 staves, and I will usually try to compose in this way. So we're kind of going backwards a little bit to show what it will then look like to go forwards. But the thinking, when I usually do this, I'll often do a melody, an accompaniment underneath, and then use the top part for any fills or flourishes. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to use this line here. If I can remember how to change my clef. Still learning Dorico. So I'm going to put the melody on this here. Let's move this over so I can actually see. And I'm going to input this real quick, and I will put it on the top octave, I think. Change page. Oh wow, what am I doing? I was in the wrong mode. That's a mess. Let's try that again. Am I in the right mode this time? Yep, sorry about that. Change page. Oops, that's flat. we'll go on. And now to make sure I'm actually capturing the music, I'm gonna actually make sure I get the phrase marks. There's no dynamic listed here. It was already forte before, so I'm gonna add that in, forte, slur there, slight hairpin here. All these little things, all these little additions, accent marks, hairpins are really important in making this musical and alive and kind of sung almost. If you were singing this, you wouldn't just keep it at a flat monotone. And so you want to tell your players, I don't want to keep this at a flat monotone. I want you to kind of breathe into certain moments and hit that E up there a little stronger than everything else and just really be expressive. But if you want your players to be expressive, you know, tell them how you want it expressed. So we got that, we got that. We got another little hairpin here. I really feel like that swell to a performer's perspective is going to be pretty subtle. I mean, it's not going to be like a huge difference. We got another swell here and an accent. So that's it. That's our main line. It's a great line. And it's fully marked up. We've got slurs, we've got accents, we've got hairpins. And now let's look at the score. I'll take you back here. Oh no, Dorco is not shared. I am sorry to hear that. All right, thank you for telling me. That's why the chat is a great thing. All right, here's Dorco. There's Dorco. When I switched from the score over to Dorco, there's Dorco. There's the melody with phrase markings and dynamics and little hairpins and accents and everything. I've got a little extra one here somehow. Everything written out. Now I want to jump over. So I've only input the melody so far. I want to jump over to the actual score for a second. So now we're at 171. The main line, the main thing you really hear with this melody is this string sound. And you can see it here in violins, violin 1 at 171. In the same exact octave, it's doubled with flute and flute 3, which so a single flute and oboe 1 in unison. That's that top line. And so we'll mark that. We'll say, I'm going to leave the score up, but just over here, I'm going to be writing. Okay, no, I'll add it after actually. So while I still have the score up, it's annoying having to switch back and forth with these. Let's look at what else is happening. So we've also got this oboe 2 and English horn an octave below, as well as the violin 2. So we have the main line here is supported in octaves. Then we go an octave down again, and we've got, the violas with the violin 2. We've got the cello and the horns. So very thick, rich, but focused sound. This melody is given kind of this monophonic texture where kind of the main focus is just the clarity of the line, and any harmony or any chord tones or anything else is going to be coming through from other parts. But the melody is just it's not like a thickened melody in harmony in sixths or in thirds or anything. It's a very focused line, and that's part of what helps it cut through. So what the simplest way I think to look at this, so now I see I have to click share. It takes me out of the app and I have to put it back on. Really, I think an effective way to do this is right. You know, what do we want? Violin 1, flute, oboe, plus 8 VB, oboe, English horn, viola, and 15 VB, cellos, horns. Very pretty. There, looks a little better in the page view. So we've been at what did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We had 9 stabs showing us this before on the score, and we've been able to be like, you know what, actually, It's one thing. There's only one thing happening here, and it's this line. If you wanted to, if it was a little clearer for you to look at it, you know, you could show that lower octave. I probably would. Just so as I'm writing and as I'm thinking about where do I have space and where am I trying to carve things, I know that I have that. I really don't like where that is. Is that any better? It's not. Why won't it move? All right. Let's keep this all in one line. Maybe we can make it easier to read that way. Yeah, we'll go with it there. Easy enough to read. No. All right, we'll go with page view. So now the next thing, let's go back to the score. Give me a moment here. So that's the melody. The next thing you probably, what sticks out to me is the busiest part, which is on this flute. And let's see, is it for two flutes? It's a little unclear here, actually. If that is just flute 1 or flutes 1 and 2. Doesn't feel like it's actually super clear. I'm going to assume that's for 2. That's A2, but I don't know. It actually isn't written. And the clarinet is A2, so I'm going to assume that it's flutes 1 and 2 as well. I think the A2 is just happened to be missing. So notice our dynamic marking in the flutes and oboes for that melody line was mezzo forte. The dynamic for this busy arpeggio part is mezzo piano. So even though this is kind of crossing within the same register as the melody, and you might be like, you know, aren't they going to clash? One part of making that easier is that it's told to back down an octave. Also, another reason it's going to be less heard is actually kind of counterintuitively the busyness. The fact that it's kind of this constant moving, flowing arpeggio thing is going to make it stick out less than these strong quarter notes. And then, of course, the quarter notes are supported in 3 octaves, so it's with, you know, 9 players. So it's a very big melody, quarter note sound. These arpeggios, even though they may be crossing in the same pitch range, aren't really going to conflict too much. So let's add that in to our score here. I really need to find a better streaming software, I think. Going. I think I'm an octave too high. Down. All right, so that's the first part of it. This first one is short. Remember, said it was mezzo piano. And then it does something kind of fun. With these little fills. Let's bring this back down. Is that a G? My eyesight is not great. It's an E flat, sorry. Oops. Copy this over. So we've got this cool little filler lick. Let's go back to the recording in a second so we can kind of hear that. It's a subtle thing. It remains, I said this was flutes. So we'll go two flute and two clarinets. Even this little lick, this kind of filler lick, remains in the clarinets too. It's doubled an octave lower. So this is, again, a kind of monophonic sound, but it's very busy. It's filling in all these chord tones and neighbor tones, you know. So we kind of have the C major 7 sound. On this last bar, we do have a nice run, which was this. Now let's, I want to go with there. That's what's written. There's this slight rest, tiniest little rest right before the downbeat of the next bar. So usually you will run in and crash into that beat. Because the part is much busier going forward, it doesn't quite do that. We get slightly louder here. We have a slight little hairpin here. All right, so looking at this, let's jump over and listen to now. I don't know about you, but I barely hear this arpeggio part. It is kind of one of those interesting things that because it's so much felt more than heard, and felt, I think you kind of feel the wind, you feel this kind of lightness so subtly. And this recording I'm using is a live recording, so maybe in the studio recording it cuts through a little differently. But man, it is really tough to hear, which I think can make it tough to think to actually use, because sometimes there's like, well, what's the point if it's not going to be heard? Why would I be writing it? So I think in this case, like I said, the studio recording is probably a little better, and in this case I think there's a little bit of trust that you are getting these chord tones, that you are actually hearing the individual parts. The only thing I really heard more effectively was these little fills. Those cut through, and I think it's especially this one, and I think it's because of the space. That one I was actually able to hear, and these are so John Williams-y, these little flourishes in the gaps in the flutes are really nice. They are, like, to me, like a drum fill, kind of like if you were a drummer and there was a gap, you could hit a little cymbal or something, and in the same way he's kind of hitting a little cymbal by using this little flute lick into the thing. The only thing I guess I didn't change is that this, and I'll remind you that this is all in an octave lower. This lick, can we still see Dora go? Yeah. This lick here is now in two flutes, and an oboe and a clarinet, and then an octave lower, another oboe, English horn, and clarinet. So I guess we'll put that that's an octave lower. Oh, it's also in the piano. So just the simple thing you could do is put a plus, oboe, English horn, piano. Make that big H. Just so it's clear, you know, we're getting more forces. This is a bigger sound than what we had a moment ago. So there's kind of only two other things going on here. Let's go back to the score. As fun as switching everything has been. The next thing I want to look at, there's the two other things that are going on is that there's these chords in the trombones, almost like a pad, and the bottom. So we have the tuba and the basses doing the bass line. And something I think is really interesting is how that's it. You know, that I think so many of us have this instinct to think that balance means the same number of players on each part or the same number of players in each role. So you have bass, chords, melody. You might think, you know, if I have 3 people on top, I have 3 people in the bass line. In this case, I think we said we had like 9 people on top and 2 on the bass line. We have, I'm calling the bass section 1 person. So the tuba and the basses are the tuba and the basses are covering that bass line, and that is actually balancing against these 9 upper parts in the melody. I think people really underestimate how heavy the low register is and how much space it just eats up. And one of the things John Williams does so well is restraint on the bass. If you look just a few bars before what's coming, you can see this rest on beat 1, and that adds this kind of lightness in each bar to not just make each bar be like bong, 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 plodding along as the whole thing goes. Part of how we can keep this floating and light and, you know, wizardly is by not overemphasizing those downbeats with the mud and the heaviness. So let's input. I think I'm going to need another staff because the bass line and the tuba are a little, they're similar, but they're not quite the same. So I'm going to add another. Let's add it as a bass line, just so it's clear. And then the only thing I want to check is are we arco or are we pizzicato at this point? Looks like it's pits at 167, and I think it remains pits. And so that's also a way to keep with the lightness by putting that really low end in pizzicato, so it doesn't like hold and drag out and just be like this grating thick thing going on. All right, let's switch back to Dorco, and we'll input the bass, and then we'll also input the tuba, but I'm going to put him in on separate stabs. I just have to input. This is where my keyboard, I don't have enough space on the left hand, so I'm going to input it, and then I will go back and drop it an octave. I want that to be flat, not a... And then rest, rest, and then here. Okay, and now looking at, there is no dynamic marking, but we were forte before. Oh yeah, let's bring it down an octave. We are hits. Let's see, is there any phrasing or anything interesting? The only kind of interesting things here, we go to arco for just this chord, then it rests again, and then we're back to pits on these 2 notes, which crescendo with the run with everybody else. I'm going to put in the tuba real quick, and then I want to focus on listening back one more time and trying to hear the bass line. I don't know how well it's going to come through on my microphone, unfortunately, but maybe you can also go find a recording and notice how that bass feels, how much space it takes up. All right, so far we've got, that's mezzo forte. I'm inputting the tuba line right now. There's a little bit of a swell there, which is interesting because that swell happens a little later in the melody. A short note into an accent. So we'll see if we can actually hear that. And then continuing with this tuba part. That is an octave low. Oh, come on, B flat. There we go. All this is pretty similar. Interesting that the bass is arco, but does not have that decrescendo. That is slurred. So, like I said, the reason I put this out is because even though the tuba and bass are similar, they're different. They're not exactly the same. And in some ways that are kind of curious, I guess. You know, why is it that this is 2/8 notes, this is 2/8 notes, bump, 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 and here it's held. You know, it's an interesting thing to think about. I think when I put the trombone parts in, you'll see that this rhythm is actually with the trombones. So my thinking is probably that the bass pits is supposed to be kind of light and its own almost percussive in a certain way kind of part, whereas the tuba is going to be a little more locked in with his family, the brass. So the tuba and other brass are going to have their own kind of unified thing. So if everybody, so if you said, hey, I just want to hear the low brass, they would work together. The tuba and the trombones would be working together, and it wouldn't be like the trombones were doing one thing and the tuba was doing this kind of fancy little part. I think that's the thinking, is just that you're keeping the family as a functioning unit, and because they're a unified color, it won't really clash as much, even though the bass is doing something a little different. The bass is such a different color that it's not like a problem. It's just that they're, you know, it's that kind of heterophonic texture thing where it's kind of simultaneous variations of the same part. Also, remember that the bass is written an octave higher than it actually sounds, so the actual bass line is down here in that same register. So it's not clashing, I should say. It's not clashing. And then the exception is that G flat goes up on the tuba, which is probably just getting a little too low and growly. And then, sorry, did I miss the... No, there is nothing here in the tuba as far as that swell. So let's take another listen to the music. Back a little bit. So focusing on the bass line. Again, I don't think it's coming through probably my microphone terribly well, but what really stands out to me is that it's not heavy. You know, it's not, everything is not being dragged down. Part of, I think, why they drop out here is that those trumpets and horns kind of take a lot of focus, so we don't need that low end there to kind of thicken, muddy things up. The trumpets are going to fill that space in, which we'll get to that part in a second. All right, so let's go look at the score. Where were we? 171. So we've got this arpeggio filler line that is kind of felt more than heard. We've got the main melody, which is kind of the whole point of this whole 8-bar phrase, this whole theme here. And then we've got the bass line. I didn't put this timpani part. I could have. It's kind of, to me, a kind of standover from the section that came before and the build into it. I think it is worth noting that until that very end on the run, there is no percussion. We don't need like a snare drum keeping the time or a cymbal or anything. That would just fill up so much space, and we don't need that. We have rhythm in all the other parts. We have motion. There's movement everywhere. There's a few dotted half notes, which is kind of our equivalent of whole notes in this space, but they're not dragging things down because there's just so much movement in so much else. So the last thing we have here, the only other thing that's missing from this reduction is the trombones, which are doing the chords. So let's see if we can put these guys in. We'll go back to our Dorico. Share screen. Got it? Okay. All right. I'm trying to get this in kind of quick. What register is my keyboard at? Wrong register. Oh, this is gonna make this a bass clef part. So we'll fit below our main melody here. That is not where I want. The microphone is a little bit in the way here. I got two different things going on here. Don't know why I done that. So you can see, oops, you can see a little bit of movement right there on that chord, but mostly we're just holding out. That has a little dot, so just these guys on their own. Oh, I wanted that on its own. Why is it including other instruments there? Nice. Accent. Finish this in. Almost done with this whole section. This gets interesting. All right, it changes a little bit going forward. Oops. Ignoring the key command for a tie. T. Who would have thought? All right, so at this point, the other part, the other trombone goes to a busy part with the oh, sorry, that's I'm reading the transpose part. With the main melody line. So I'm going to, I guess we could say, hey, plus trombone 3 over here, which will add emphasis to that because also the trumpets come in. Plus trombone 3, plus trumpet. I guess we don't need the plus. Plus trombone 3, trumpet. Let's see, is that? Oh yeah, because the tuba is out. So yeah, let me play that again with the bass. Just these low parts. Pretty full, a pretty big thick sound, and notice that with that here, we're filling in a pretty big fat low sound, but it's openly spaced towards the bottom. It gets tighter into seconds and thirds towards the top of that thing, and these voicings overall are kind of below middle C. And I think that that's, I don't want to, I want to be careful how I put it, because I don't think like always put your trombones below middle C, but that's not a terrible rule of thumb to think that middle C is about maybe, and up is where you maybe have your main melody line, and below is where you're, just like in a piano, you're going to have your left hand doing your parts there. So yeah, I don't think it ever goes above that C. So these are nice thick voicings with a little bit of motion in them, a little bit of bite with that second, which goes with the, just getting that in 6. Let's see, can I hear, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play without the melody with that here. Yeah. All right, so that is the whole thing down here. Did I miss a dynamic mark on those trombones? They are mezzo forte. And so you can kind of see that we have 3 layers of stuff, which is melody, accompaniment, meaning chords. So melody, kind of support chords, and this filler, this blur, kind of busyness thing. And those 3 layers are being treated as, you know, focus, background, ambience, forte, lots of instruments, mezzo forte, you know, strong instruments but fewer, and then mezzo piano on even fewer, lighter instruments. So again, you know, that I said main focus, background, ambience is probably a good way to think of how this is structured. That, you know, it's 3 parts. I only reduced it down to 5 staves. Just, I mean, I guess in theory we could stick this on here, and we could say that that bass line and the tuba are essentially the same and get rid of that. So we could reduce this down to 3 lines. Maybe that would be it would be fine. We could do that, but I'm going to leave it how this is for now. I think the 5 is close enough. So let's, looking at this, go back, let's hear that recording again. I think something that really stands out for me, especially if I like put the volume even lower, is that you really, 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 really hear that melody over anything else. It's like melody, and then everybody else is there and is supporting, but that's really an important word, is supporting. It's not, you know, I've written a blog post before that balance does not mean equal, does not mean you have to have, like I said earlier, you know, it does not mean you have to have the same amount of instruments on each line. It also means you don't have to have the same amount of force and presence. So something that might be making your orchestration too thick or lacking clarity is that you're not respecting what your main line is. Your main melody is what's really supposed to be cutting through, and just give that the focus and make sure that everybody else is really there to help and support and to add richness and color and everything, but is not the point. That main melody line is the point. I like to think of it sometimes as like, if you could only hum, if you look at this and you could only hum one part, you know, it's probably not going to be this part. It's going to be this one. If somebody's like, hey, what's the theme from there? It's going to be that one. So respect that that's the main thing. I was considering like doing like a new theme and orchestrating it in this style. Maybe I would do that for next time, that we will use this reduction as inspiration, and we'll take a different melody, maybe from like a Nintendo game or something, and give it this treatment. Do this exact same thing. So we put the melody line on these instruments, we put the accompaniment, oh, I didn't mark it, we put the accompaniment in the trombones, and this is tuba, trombones and tuba, and then we put a little arpeggiated filler line in flute and clarinet, and see how it sounds. See if we get kind of that same magical big Hollywood wizard sound that we do. So I will do that for the live stream for next week. I don't know if there are any other questions. Otherwise, I will put the MIDI file I'm using XML of this reduction, and I'll just put this score up too on my Patreon, and you're welcome to download them there. And I think that's about it. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week when we'll take this orchestral texture and apply it to a different melody and hopefully get similar results.